Yeah, we're going. How are you? Fantastic. Glad you could join us. It is Shep and Sean here on a Monday morning. Of course, he is Matt Shepard. I'm Sean Baligian. Shep, this was one of those weekends. I know one of your employers, uh, formerly Fox Sports and Bally's, April in the D. It was a fantastic weekend in Detroit this past weekend. I mean, anybody that was there on Friday, yes, of course, we would have loved it to be a little warmer, but opening day, you get a win. A packed house. I was at the Red Wings game on Friday night. Unfortunately, they didn't find a way to win. Great game against the Rangers. They came back strong last night, but
Yeah.
Shep, so many good things happening in our area. How are you, my friend?
Good, buddy. Hope you had a good weekend. Yeah, I mean, look, I say this a lot. I think Detroit does big events as well as any city in America.
Yep.
I think a lot of it has to do with the people, and I think it's really cool that you had those things kind of coinciding. And then I think the build up to the NFL draft continues, and people are excited about that. And really important for the Wings to get that win, over Buffalo that you were talking about, just so I think the interest remains. I agree with you. Look, would you say the Rangers are the best team in the NHL? They're one of them,
One
right?
of them. One of them.
And I don't know if that's a measuring stick, because I think we all want wins, right? But to play that hard against that team, I thought was pretty damn impressive. And to see the guys who are continuing to elevate their game a little bit. I mean, we saw it again against Buffalo with Kane and Raymond and Larkin getting the goals. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of positive stuff going on. We could nitpick on a few things, especially with the Tigers, and I think it would be fair. I don't even think it's nitpicking. It's criticism, and it's rightfully so. But damn, I mean, we've got to be careful because it's such a long season, Sean. And you and I have been through so many times with Lions fans where we spend all week long hearing the complaints about Lions, and then Sunday comes along, and then you have another week. With baseball, you get it every single day based on what they just did. And I think there's some things that people are encouraged with, but I think there's some deep-rooted concerns, and they're justified too.
Shep, you just brought something up. I remember the 2007 season for the Lions. And the Lions, if you recall, got off to a 6-2 start. Did I think it was legitimate? Absolutely not. I'm telling you point blank, I didn't think for a second it was legitimate. But I remember I joked about it and I said, I'm going Lovie Smith. Because remember the one year that the Bears went to the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman and the Chicago media just killed them all year. And yet somehow, some way, there they were in the Super Bowl with Rex freaking Grossman.
I know.
And I remember when I was doing our show, Shep, I said, I'm going Lovie Smith, because at every one of his press conferences during that 2006 season, he'd say, we're 8-3. We're in first place in the division. And he'd repeat it. And I kept saying that about the Lions that season. The Lions are 5-2. I'm going to enjoy this until I can't enjoy it anymore. And sadly, the season fell apart. But I saw a lot of that with the Tigers. Well, who have they beaten? When they got up to the 6-1 start and won on Friday, a lot of people were saying, well, who have they beaten? And it's like, okay, just calm down for a second, because we and you on an up close and personal basis have seen far too many seasons where the Tigers play a schedule something like this and go 3-4 in that time, or God forbid, go 4-3. They're sitting at 6-1 on Friday. Just had a nice win on opening day. Look, if you want to find something to bitch about, I'm sure you'll find it, but I didn't think it was prudent at that point in time.
Look, you and I have done this a long time. I still struggle with this because I think we're fair. I think you and we're willing to criticize teams and players at the right moment. And I think it's fair. We don't just bitch about guys every single day because they're in a slump. All right. We're pretty patient when it comes to that. But I do wonder a little bit about when we think a team is supposed to win or a player is supposed to do this in this situation. I still struggle with that myself because I find myself feeling the exact same way, right? I mean, you've got to hit that ball, okay? You've got to catch that pass. You've got to make that shot. Whatever, you've got to make that save. You've got to beat that team. Well, we'll look at Pittsburgh, okay? The Tigers are about to play Pittsburgh.
Yep.
At the offset, you immediately think, well, that's a series you should win, right? They're off to their best start since 2018. They
Yep.
just beat Baltimore in back-to-back games.
Yep.
That's impressive, and Baltimore's a really good baseball team. So, I mean, we can play that game all day long. I just wonder, and I'm using this for myself too, I just wonder which of the games you're supposed to win. Because when you're not a very good team, and the Tigers, it remains to be seen, but based off last year, they weren't a very good team, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't you think every single team that has them on the schedule is going, that's a game we should win? So
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm not sure when it comes to the point where we have the right to say we should win that game. Like, who are we to say Oakland? There's no way Detroit should lose to Oakland. I don't think Oakland's very good. Don't get me wrong. How they've won 21 of the last 25 at Comerica Park is beyond me. How they outscore you 11-1 over the last two games is beyond me. So I understand why people would say that. I'm just wondering, who are the Tigers right now? What have they accomplished that would make me, as a fan, a talk show host, a play-by-play guy, whatever, say, damn it, man, you got to win those games. You got to beat teams like that. They're saying the same damn thing about you.
No question. Shep, it's almost like I always joke about this in recent years, okay? Growing up, and maybe this is revisionist history on my part, I thought the NFL, you knew pretty much what every team was going into said season. You really did. You
probably more than any other sport, right?
I think so. And in recent years, that's just not the case. Yeah. So when the schedule inevitably comes out, look, I'm a hypocrite. I play the schedule game. I play the schedule game 700 times, but I do so knowing full well that there's always a good chance that at the beginning of the year, what we think a team is, they aren't. At the middle of the year, what we think a team is, they aren't. And towards the end of the year, it has become so fluid in the National Football League. When you think you know something about a team, let's use the Detroit Lions this past year as an example. The beginning of the year, we were all going, yeah, baby. Yep. This is it. This is it. And then if we're being honest with ourselves, okay, if we're being honest with ourselves, around Thanksgiving with some of those defensive issues, whether it be the win at San Diego, where, I mean, they gave up, what was it, 5 straight scoring drives, whether it be the Thanksgiving Day game ourselves, we all sat back saying, well, this is cute. Well, maybe we make the playoffs, but with this defense, we're going to get crushed by the Rams or whoever the case may be. And then by golly, a month later, we're all thinking, hey, this team can go to the Super Bowl. That's the National Football League today. And I think when you're talking about a 162 game schedule, there are ebbs and flows in baseball that you just don't see in other sports. That doesn't mean that some of our concerns, point blank, I raised my hand. At the beginning of the year, I was terrified about this lineup. There are nice pieces, but this whole lineup, what is this lineup going to be? And you know what? All of a sudden, you weren't worried about it. You saw some clutch hitting. And then the last couple of days against, a couple of guys that, unless you're diehard baseball elite, you've never heard of, they got shut down. So, I mean, what's true? What's not? I have no idea. I know the Tigers are 6-3. How's that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. When we have that discussion, though, who is it about that lineup that concerns you most? So when people say, and I had somebody at the gym this morning say the same thing, oh, this team can't score. And I said, I think they've scored 7 runs in a game, 6 runs in a game, 5 runs in a game. And look, their overall numbers aren't very good. It's also a 2-week sample size, for crying out loud.
Absolutely. No doubt.
So I like to get in a little bit deeper and say, fine, that's your concern. I think there's validation there. Who about this are you concerned? Because 3 years ago, people wanted Spencer Torkelson right away. This year, Colt Keith's got to make this team, right? They signed Javier Baez. Well, at least they spent some money on a shortstop, right? Gio Urshela is actually a pretty good hitter. I just worry about his health, right? People
Mhm.
wanted to see Parker Meadows. They wanted to see Riley Green. I mean, it's a pretty young team. I think what the driving force behind people, I'm not speaking for you because you'll tell me that in a minute. I think the driving force behind people is they wanted, with 32 million off the books from Miguel Cabrera's contract, they wanted to take that 32 million and go find somebody and get a key guy. And I mean a big middle of the bat guy. I'll use the name Matt Chapman, who drove in 2 for the Giants the other day. I think that's fair. I wanted him too. The Tigers aren't doing that. Why? I don't know. I mean, you've got young guys. Sure, they're playing. Okay. You need some stabilization. And it's not that I don't like Mark Canha or I don't like Gio Urshela or I don't like Jack Flaherty or Shelby Miller or Carson Kelly or anybody. But my God, man, can you get a guy who's established and who a pitcher on the mound goes, holy crap, I got to be careful with this guy. They don't have
Yep.
that guy.
No, not at
So
all.
I don't want to
listen,
speak for you. I don't know what part of the lineup you don't like, but I'm sure it's justified. But I think that's where it stems from. I think it stems from the fact that, okay, finally Cabrera is gone. All right. The ground ball up the middle is gone. Shouldn't have been in the 3 spot. Shouldn't have been in the 4 spot. Shouldn't have been in the 5 spot. Quite honestly, should have been an 8 or a 9 hitter based on what he could do for your lineup. Where is the middle of the lineup threat? It's not there.
nope.
They didn't do a damn thing about it. That's on them. And I think that's where most people feel like, that's the problem.
You know what? You mentioned a couple of guys. I mean, for me, Shep, and I hate to be that guy that's going to pick apart, where you're going to put this guy in the lineup, but you open up that door. I would go with a guy like Canha because this is a guy that's going to get on base. I think people know this is a guy that's going to work the count, can find a way to get on base and get. I think Parker Meadows in the 1 spot. I think you're trying to shoehorn a guy in there, quite frankly. I do. I'd rather take my chances on a guy that has shown that he can get on base, and that's kind of his knock with that OBP. The rest of it, listen, there are questions about Spencer Torkelson, whether we want to admit it or not. And this is a guy that came off a season where he got hot, but there are long-term questions. I think Riley Green's going to be okay, but I mean, who is, to go on your point, who is that guy that's going to make you go, ooh, you know what I mean? And I don't think it's there. And that's what I worry about. And quite frankly, and I know you and I have talked about this before, I still think there are a few guys, and this isn't a Detroit thing. I think it's a fandom thing. I think there are a few guys that people have kind of put on a pedestal for whatever reason and think of them as something that they are not. Those are the things that worry me. And I'm not going down the whole Akil Badu road here, okay? And I've cried about that guy for 3 years. I didn't get it. People going crazy over him. I didn't get it. I think there's still a few pieces in that lineup, Shep, that, if we're being serious, if we really want to say, no, we're a competitor, they're not going to be part of that lineup. They're going to be pieces of a team, but not part of an everyday lineup.
Right. That's why I've said for a long time, and I'll continue to say it, and I got in debates with players and coaches about this too. A lot of coaches, when they don't like the term everyday player, okay? Or they don't like it as a utility player. They like role players and all this other stuff. And I say, yeah, the guys who have teams like that don't like those words. The guys who have teams with everyday players, you damn right they like that phrase, because they know when they show up at the ballpark every single day, that's what you can do. You can pencil in a guy at third, a guy at short, a guy at second, a guy behind the dish, a guy in center field, and a guy in court. I don't want a bunch of utility guys. Oh, he's really valuable. That's what Scott Harris always says. He's really valuable. He can help us at second, short, third. That's fine. I don't mind a guy or two like that. I want everyday guy. I want a best third baseman. I want a best shortstop. It's like an offensive lineman, for Christ's sakes. I'm so tired of hearing this guy could play guard, center, and tackle for us. Okay, where is he best? Give me the best player at that freaking position, stick him in there, and I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the year, as long as he stays healthy. How many players do you have like that?
I challenge people to go back and look at some of those lineups from the glory years. And obviously there was a different spending mechanism. We all know that. But to your point, listen, Ramon Santiago was a great player. The way they used him.
The way they
probably
used him,
great. Let me strike the word great. I'm going on your thing.
Valuable.
We
He's a valuable player.
The way they used him. Right.
Dead
I mean,
on.
how many of those pieces were like that, Shep? And you know, give Leland his credit. Sometimes he made you pull hair out of his head with some of his choices, but more often than not, he knew when to utilize those type of players and when not to use those type of players. Listen, Don Kelly became like a folk hero to this fan base. Okay.
Right.
Why was he a folk hero? It wasn't because of what he did every day. He came in every now and again, had a couple big knocks. We remember the playoffs against the A's and things like that. But this wasn't a guy you were asking, we need to rely on you day in, day out. And there are still too many Zach McKinstry's of the world that you know, literally on a day in, day out basis, you're asking this guy to be something that he isn't.
Right. And if you're asking him to do that every single day, you're going to expose him. That's the deal. 100%. You bring that team up, it's Prince Fielder every day. It's Placido Polanco every day. It's Carlos Guillen every day. It's Brandon Inge every day, right? I mean, it's Curtis Granderson every day. It's Torrey Hunter every day. That's what you had. Did you have Craig Monroe and Marcus Timms? Yes. Did you have Don Kelly? Yes. How many of those guys did you have? That's it. The great teams don't sit there and say, we're going to win the division. We're going to challenge for a championship by having a bunch of damn role players. Wrong answer. You need everyday guys. And 100%. Damn it, you've got, and you can get all the pitching you want. And this team, supposedly its strength is pitching. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't have that guy in the middle of the lineup, that's going to scare you. I'm not saying you've got to have back-to-back guys, Bash Brothers, okay? I'm just saying for this team, it'd be nice to have at least one thumper in the middle of the lineup who you can count on, and it'll make teams pitch a guy before or after him a little differently.
100%. Listen, we'll get to some of your comments in a second. Let me tell you about our friends at Legacy. Always love chatting these guys up. Why? Because they can help you. Did you know that thousands of Metro Detroiters have already called Legacy Partners to get help with their home and auto insurance? What are you waiting for? You can be one of them. Just put them to the test. Call, get your quote. You will find out what so many other people have found out, that our friends at Legacy are one of Southeast Michigan's top independent insurance agents, and they provide a full-service one-stop solution for all of your insurance needs, whether it be personal, business, large, or small. They have helped our listeners by fixing mistakes other agents have made. Now, that's important. They ask the right questions to get the right coverage put in place to properly protect you. Yeah, they save you some money as well. What are you waiting for? Chances are, if you haven't checked your policies in the last year, you're probably paying too much and you could also be underinsured. Enter Legacy Partners. Give them the chance to help with your home, your cars, life insurance, Medicare enrollment, or your business insurance needs. Call them today, 586-209-4106, or visit legacypartnersins.com to get started with your quotes. Put them to the test. Joe and Alex and Dave have taken care of so many people in the community. They can take care of you as well. Shep, some comments. Jason says, morning, fellas. Hope all is well with you and yours. Jason, thank you very much. I hope you have your wacky glasses today. Shep and I are going to get together, have a little barbecue, and watch the eclipse. Rodney said, this is when you have to spend the money. Right. Todd said, coaching has to cover up a lot of inadequacies with smart moves, and we have to cover up a lot of shortcomings. Need a few players that don't have those gaps.
Yeah, let's go back to what Rodney said. This is when you have to spend the money. So the Tigers will tell you, they did spend some money. You know, Jack Flaherty cost money. Shelby Miller cost money. Gio Urshela cost some money. Mark Canha cost some money. However, it's not addressing the ultimate need. is what think who's the last power bat? And that's what it takes. Sorry. I mean, it just does. I mean, you got to score runs to win games. All right. I'm all for pitching and defense, even though their defense isn't very good. Think about that for a second. What do we always hear? Build up the middle. So
Yep.
your strength behind the plate is solid, right? Baez, we know, is not an elite shortstop. He can make some elite plays, but consistently, no. Cole Keith, what is the negative about Cole Keith? I'm not going to say that he's not going to come around. I'm just saying right now, what's the negative? It's his defense, right? That's what was preventing him from getting here. Everybody said he had a major league bat, but not glove. And in center field, Parker Meadows really good. I mean, dynamic. So you're not super strong in the middle of your infield. Defensively, you're not that good. Gio Urshela it's not like he's got great range. Okay. There's no Matt Chapman. There's no Nolan Arenado there. There's a lot to be desired there. So where's the strength? The strength might be in left field and center field and behind the dish. That's not great. So what do you have to do? You're gonna need some offense, for crying out loud, and you don't have it. I mean, you just don't have that big thumper. Who's the last middle of the order bat any opposing pitcher feared when you saw the Tigers were coming to town? Cabrera in his prime.
Miguel Cabrera before, the bottom dropped out.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a while ago. That's a while ago, Sean. So that's a problem. That's a serious problem. I agree with you. I think that's when you have to spend the money. You've got the money now. Okay. You've been waiting for this opportunity to spend the money. Spend it. I mean, if you want to send the message, spend it. I know they have spent money in other areas. I know they spent money on Javier Baez. I know they upped with Cole Keith. I'm not suggesting to go out and compete with the Red Sox, the Cubs, the Yankees, and the Dodgers from a financial standpoint. I'm saying spend middle of the freaking pack. That's what I'm suggesting. And I don't think that's too much to ask for from this town, this fan base, and this organization.
No, not at all. No. And you know what, Shep, they did spend elsewhere, and I want to give some credit because I went off on this maybe a month and a half ago, and I don't know if you and I have had this conversation.
Where did they spend?
On Comerica Park, because the place was a crap hole. It really was. I'm not joking. We talked about this a month and a half ago, and I think you know this. So we had tickets forever. My son and I had tickets forever from 05 to 17. We had 40 game package, 35 game package, whatever different package they were offering us that particular year. And then in recent years, he went away to school, but this past year we went a lot because Hollywood was on that strike and, he didn't have a chance to work with The Walking Dead anymore. Shep, I went to that park and I cannot tell you how decrepit that park was. And this is a park that opened in the year 2000. And it was funny because we were talking about it. Todd and I were talking about it. And so many people jumped in and said the same thing. What happened? And perceptions exist for a reason, right or wrong. Perceptions exist for a reason. And whether Christopher Ilitch wants to admit it or not is inconsequential, in my opinion. There's a perception that Christopher Ilitch doesn't care. Okay. Do I believe that? No, I don't. I don't. But with that being said, if you're not spending the money on your team and the ballpark is literally falling apart, okay, whether it be none of the old box TVs circa 2004 working, whether it be half the time I went there and sat in seats, a seat was broken or this was falling apart. Shep, I walked around that park last year and Jack and I were laughing one day. We were like, this park has been here 23 years. And you would think that it's been here 93 years. The way that the upkeep just wasn't there. Now, in fairness, I haven't been to the park yet this year. I'll change that very, very soon. But that's one thing that I heard from a lot of people. Oh my gosh, it's nice to actually have like real, almost modern TVs around, where you could listen to the broadcast, where you could see what's going on when you went to get your beer, your hot dog. I don't know if they fix the seats, Shep. I crap you not. There were 4 different games I went to last year around the park. And I like to sit in the first row of the mezzanine. Personally, I think they're the best seats in the house, looking down on the glass or along the first baseline. 4 different times I went, and one of the seats that we had were just flat out broken.
Yeah.
Now, come on. Are
Yeah,
you in a
I'm not
22 years
suggesting they didn't spend any money. I mean, they got a brand new
old?
plane this year too, for the
Yes.
athletes. That's really important. And there are little things about that plane, for example, that both the Red Wings and Tigers will take advantage of, where seats can go all the way back. So if a guy's injured, or you can put certain electrodes and stuff, things like that to work. Things that are beyond my understanding, but that allows trainers to work on these guys a little bit better. They have really enhanced their minor league system and nutrition and down in Lakeland, for example, where a lot of the rookies stay, and the meal plans and things of that nature. I'm all for that. That's not affecting people watching the current major league squad.
Yep.
I think that's a given. I think most people would go, you know what? I'm going to a ballpark that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build, a lot of it taxpayer money. It should be taken care of.
100%.
I'm talking about the product on the field. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know about baseball budgets. Where does the money go from Christopher Ilitch and the Tigers to the ballpark, to the minor league facilities, compared to on field? Are they 2 separate items? I don't know that. But I do know this. Whatever it is, it's not enough for the on field. The Kansas City Royals payroll is greater than the Tigers payroll this year. The Tigers have a payroll of $106 million. They're 22nd in baseball out of 30 teams. Only the Brewers, the Reds, the Guardians, Tampa, Miami, Oakland, Pittsburgh are worse. I'm missing a team. I'm missing a Baltimore, actually. And it's funny because you can use the argument, well, wait a minute, Baltimore and Tampa does. I'm not a big believer that you've got to spend $300 million like the New York Mets. All right?
No.
All I'm saying is, if you're the Tigers and you're in Detroit, could you not spend what the Rockies spend? The Rockies are about middle of the road. All right? And they're not very good. It's $142 million, Sean. 142. Yep. I don't think that's much to ask. That's all I'm saying. And believe me, I'm not one of those guys who just say throw the money at whomever. It's got to be wise. You got to be smart about it, right? It's like
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So you're just because you got enough money to buy a car doesn't mean you're going to go out and buy whatever car you think it looks best. You're going to do your research. So the Tigers have to make sure they did the research. I just don't know why they didn't spend money on the area that was most distressed. That's all.
I look at a couple teams that won in the past decade, Shep, and I think they illustrate your point. For years, we heard about the Kansas City Royals and all their cute little prospects, all right? And I remember people saying in 2011, look out for the Royals. Well, they sucked in 2011. They sucked in 2012. They sucked in 2013, okay? And then all of a sudden, they got good. And they fell short one year. And you know what they did? They had all those prospects, but you know what put them over the top? They went out and they spent some money, and they went and got some guys. The Houston Astros are another example. How many times did we hear about all these names? And let's face it, a lot of these names that we heard about, John Singleton. Remember, he was a can't-miss guy that got $1 million. Chris Carter. These names, these can't-miss guys. Well, they missed, but they had enough other pieces to get very interesting. But what put them over the top? When they went out and they got an ace like a Justin Verlander, and they added. So you're absolutely right. You can get the team to a point in striking distance. If you want to get them over the top, you got to open up the purse strings. That's just the way it is. I firmly believe that, and history has shown that.
Yeah, as long as you're smart about it. Look, they've had some terrible contracts in the past. You and I have both talked about it. The Cabrera extension was a ridiculous contract, right? All those different things. However, if you can get a guy on a 3 or a 4 year deal, don't tell me you couldn't have gotten, I'll use the name again, Matt Chapman, addresses your third base needs, addresses middle of the order pop, a guy who can be an unbelievable leader, and a guy who can still help you defensively. He would have been an ideal fit for the Detroit Tigers.
What a bummer. I want to get your thoughts on the Wings in just a second. That 10 minutes yesterday, I'll get to in a second, but that was as well as I've seen them play in a long time. I want to see if you saw the same thing. Let me tell you about our friends from Wealth Advantage for just a moment. There they are, the Handsome Brothers. Right there. Mike Cusack on the left, Jeff Cusack on the right. It's like Slapshot 2. We'll use the Handsome Brothers. Hey, are you ready to take charge of your financial future? Well, look no further than Wealth Advantage Group, located in historic downtown Northville, owned by two brothers, right there, the Handsome Brothers, with over 20 years of industry experience. They understand that your financial goals are as unique as you are. That's why they offer personalized expert guidance to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning. Now, whether you're saving for retirement, getting ready to sell your company, already in retirement, whatever the case may be, they can help guide you through every step of your financial journey. They work with clients throughout all stages of life and have clients in over 20 different states. The investment world, well, it is a complex one. So if you're ready to start taking your finances more seriously, it might be time to work with a couple of experts. Reach out to those guys, the Wealth Advantage Group, at 248-773-8574, or visit their website at www.thewealthadv.com. Red Wings got a much-needed win yesterday. I love Sunday matinees. I love matinee games, Saturday, Sunday afternoon games. I think it's fantastic. I was joking with some of my friends yesterday, Shep. When I was a kid, boy, I used to love, God forbid I had the chance to go to a Red Wings game at noon or 1 or whatever the case may be. And then you come back home and you get a chance to watch more hockey at night with Hockey Night in Canada. But Shep, to me, after that first shift, Buffalo kind of jumped on them early, if you recall, to start that game. There was about a 10-minute period where the Red Wings, dare I say, it almost looked like the puck possession era of the Red Wings, where they controlled play. They were in the attacking zone constantly. There was a level of intensity there that we hadn't seen in quite some time. And you know how it is. So many people, it's just so easy to say, well, there's a problem in the room, or there's an issue here or an issue there. It certainly didn't look like a team that had any kind of issue. They coasted to that 3-goal lead and were able to coast the rest of the way. It was huge, but a lot more work needs to be done. I mean, this is as compacted as you can imagine. And one thing working against them, and I've been saying this to anybody that'll listen, the tiebreaker, in case of a tie, those regulation wins, and the Wings are lacking in that department. They have to go out and win games, period, end of story.
Yeah, the goal by Kane, I thought, was really impressive, man. I mean, it's the defenseman. I was going to use the word, and I think maybe we overuse it sometimes, but dominant. I mean, they looked like a dominant force in that game against Buffalo. I worry a little bit about the schedule and what's left. So in case people aren't completely aware, they just frogged Pittsburgh again, because Pittsburgh had done the Sun with a win the prior night. So Detroit is the 2 wild card right now. You've got Washington and Pittsburgh each with 83 points. Philadelphia has 83 points as well. Philadelphia has played 78 games. Detroit has a game in hand there, but they've played the same number of games as Pittsburgh, Washington, and the Islanders. The problem is, as Sean alluded, it's not just, the regulation wins, but I mean, if you look at the schedule, sure, they got your beloved Habs at the end of the season in back-to-back games.
The game against,
well, I mean, you would think so, but I would have thought that would against Phoenix too, or Arizona, and you didn't get it. The game against Washington is tomorrow, I think. The game against Washington is vital. Then you're at Pittsburgh, you're at Toronto. So in other words, they only have home games left. And I'm like you and I said this before, I don't think home ice advantage is huge. You get the last line change, but I'm not sure it's a huge factor. You get Washington at home, and Montreal is one of the home games. The other games are on the road. Toronto's highly skilled offensively. I love watching the Maple Leafs. Pittsburgh has, is a grinded team that is going to be, a tough battle. and as we mentioned, Washington at home. So I mean, I think the schedule is a little concerning for me on whether or not this team can get it done. It's not just the Washington game, but that game at Pittsburgh is vital.
Sidney Crosby is on a tear right now too,
He's
and
unbelievable.
I see. I'm so glad to hear you say that. I think you and I have talked about that before. The disdain for that guy. Okay, that's one thing, but the people in this town, and there are people in the media that do this, that talk about him being overrated, and he's just a product of the Canadian media. If you're one of those people, remind me to never talk about hockey with you ever, like ever.
Oh
I
my
don't.
God. Yeah.
Shep, he is such a phenomenal player. You ask anybody close to the game, and I'm sure you have, the little things that guy does. Forget about him literally taking a not very good team on his shoulder the past few weeks.
Right.
The little thing that guy does, shift in, shift out, you can't put a price tag on that.
I was talking with our mutual friend, yours and mine, Larry Murphy, not too long ago, and Larry Murphy said he's still the best 200-foot center in the world.
No doubt about it.
And he's 35. Crosby's 35. And in case people don't know, Sidney Crosby has 40 goals at the age of 35. That's impressive. I mean, he's right there with William Nylander and Mikko Rantanen. Leon Draisaitl is a guy who, love watching him play. When you've got him and you've got Hyman and you've got McDavid, I mean, it's a fun team to watch. I mean, same number as goals as a guy like Sidney Crosby. Anyone who says that, and this is where I think too often, and I'm guilty of it too, by the way, we let our emotions get in the way.
Yeah.
If you're talking to people in Detroit and you're saying Sidney Crosby, they immediately say overrated. They say they can't stand the guy. And it stems back to 2009 when he spoiled the Red Wings winning back-to-back cups again. And what everybody, and I was on the ice. I wasn't just at the game. I was on the ice, and I interviewed him and Mario Lemieux after the game on the ice. It stems from this belief that he didn't get to center ice to shake hands soon enough with Nick Lidstrom. It's an absolute joke. He's one of the most gifted hockey players of our generation, perhaps of all time. You'd be better to answer that than I would be. I would take him on my team 10 out of 10 times. And not to mention the fact, from what everybody has told me who has covered him and those who have played with or against him have said he's an incredible leader and an unbelievable community member. And I think those are all the things you want, not just in a player, but in your captain. I'd take him every single day of the week. I am mesmerized by what he does on a regular basis.
That guy's going to be 37 years old this summer, Shep, and showing.
I thought he was 35 now, so he's 36 now. Okay.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
but showing no signs of slowing down. Just this month, 5 goals and an assist in the last 4 games to seemingly put the Pens. I mean, they were the Walking Dead just a few weeks ago to come roaring back in, and now being in the position where, again, and it was funny. I was kind of talking to some people on Twitter, and they didn't understand the whole tie-breaking thing. That little RW category, when you're looking at the standings, that's your tiebreaker.
Yeah.
And I need to say again, in case of a tie, yes, they go with the team that has more regulation wins, and that's something that doesn't bode well for the Red Wings right now. I think this was a big step for this Red Wing team, though, Shep. I really do, and I know it's not the step that people wanted, okay? I need to say this again. I'm going to get Steve Yzerman's back. It's not as easy as people think it to be, okay? And whether it be Steve Yzerman, when Pat Verbeek was here, Chris Draper, I think to a man, they would tell you that they were thinking long-term with this, that there wasn't a quick fix, that yes, the cupboard.
What's long-term? What's long-term?
I think in my mind, Shep, I don't think you begin to start having conversations about really competing until you're 5 years in my mind. I think there's a reason why.
How long has he been doing it?
It'll be 5 years on April 19th.
Okay.
It'll be 5 years on April 19th.
We got to understand, for Red Wings fans, it's not just the Steve Yzerman era. The rebuild, they look at it as the rebuild, not the Steve Yzerman rebuild. They look at it as the rebuild. The
Yeah.
rebuild has been going longer than 5 years.
Oh,
That's
100%.
so I think that's the big problem. The other thing is, and look, nothing against Steve Yzerman. I think he's going to get it right too. He didn't make any promises, but when your team is playing the way it was earlier this year, you can change your expectations. I mean, you taught me that early on. Okay, so the expectations were this team should make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, it's a disappointment. Who's it on? There's a lot of room for people to blame, right? But Steve Yzerman's got to shoulder some of it. I'm not giving him a free pass. He's the one who brought these guys in. He's the guy who had put his stamp on this team. This team should make the playoffs. And if it doesn't, it's a failed season, and he can take some of the blame. He should take some of the blame.
And I think that will come. And Shep, I'll say it again. If you take the time to listen to what a general manager or coach is saying, which not a lot of people do, both in and out of the business, I think he'll give you the answers that you're looking for. And with Steve Yzerman from day one, I go back to that press conference. Like he said, this isn't going to be easy. This isn't going to happen overnight. My goal is not to just get this team back in the playoffs. It's to get them to that point that we all grew so accustomed to. Because, I mean, let's face it, keeping the streak alive, was it cute to say, yay, we made it so many years? Yes, but how many of those teams were absolutely fraudulent, didn't have a chance of going anywhere? And quite frankly, I think Shep hurt this team in the long run. And you brought up the Cabrera contract earlier when we were talking about the Tigers. Nobody wanted to hear it, but I was screaming it going back to 2015. Pavel, thanks for the memories. Really, thank you for the memories. We are not giving you a 3-year contract.
I remember that. I remember that. I remember that. Yeah.
It's the smart.
You were kind of on an island there, a little bit of an island.
I know I was.
But you turned out to be right for sure. It's hard for us as fans to separate that emotion and the right business sense. You want a guy, I want him to retire a Red Wing. I want him to retire a Tiger. I want him to be with just one team. We would all love that. But when you see a guy's diminished skills and you look at a contract and what he needs or wants, and it exceeds what you think should happen, you've got to be smarter about your business. How many times did you and I hear for years people say that you got to treat this guy the right way? Hold on. They've treated him very well moving forward, okay? When you finally reach a certain point, you got to have the gumption to say, listen, we love you. You will always be one of us. 3 years is excessive. We could do a 1-year deal. How do you feel? I don't. Okay, then this is the tough goodbye. We've all had them, okay? And you're going to continue to have them. How do you do that? You got to cut ties when you know it's the right time to do it. That's the reason general managers and presidents of organizations make the money that they make. They didn't do it at the right time.
Think with your head, not your heart. You can't let your heart come into the equation. You just can't. Anwar said,
that's hard for us to do, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Are you kidding me? Anwar said, hey, Shawnee Shep, what up, Doe? Hockey will always hockey. Who knows? Thank you for listening. Appreciate you greatly. So, Shep, are you surprised that women's college basketball has blown up the way that it has?
Yeah,
I'm interested to get your thoughts. Listen, I don't care if you think it's a farce, whatever. The numbers are the numbers. I mean, their ratings were unbelievable. So if you're one of those guys, I mean, tip of the cap stuff, right? If you're one of those guys that say, this is never going to go over, this is never going to get good ratings. Hey, listen, now it's time to sell the game. Were you kind of taken aback by some of those numbers? They were really absurd.
A couple of things that I was taken aback by. So one was, yes, the numbers, especially the 12.3 million people that watched LSU in Iowa. That was more than any other, more than any NBA game. I think just about more than any football game outside the Super Bowl. So yes, I am very surprised at that. I think it's great. I am bothered by the piling on of ex or current WNBA women's basketball players, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, the seemingly non-belief or hate might be a little strong of a word, the doubt for Caitlin Clark. And I can't understand it when she's helping grow the game. And obviously it stems from jealousy. All right. There's anybody who denies that is full of crap. They feel like she's getting too much attention. How many times have you and I talked about when somebody is really good at something, all people want to do is tear them down? You know, Gibby used to tell me this all the time. You're climbing the ladder, you're reaching for the goal, and all you have is negative naysayers at the bottom trying to grab your ankles and pull you down. And that's exactly what has happened with Caitlin Clark. And I give her a massive amount of credit for how she has handled it, because I don't know many people who could handle the weight of not just a team, not just a conference, but an entire sport. And that's what she's had to do really the last 2 years. I'm not saying she's all by herself, because there's others like Paige Beckers who are really good, and Angel Reese and so on and so forth. But it's pretty hard for one person to carry it. Now you know what Wayne Gretzky had to go through, you know? So a little surprise there. And the last thing I'm surprised at, Sean, and I actually almost called you when I saw this take place. I was hoping that we could talk about it last week. We didn't have time, but I'm glad we can do it now. Paul Pierce is a moron. Paul Pierce is an absolute idiot. Now, in case people don't know, Paul Pierce went on FS1's Undisputed show. And this is what he said verbatim. What we saw was a white girl in Iowa do it to a bunch of black girls. That gained my respect. She didn't do it to some other little white girl that was over here in Colorado. She did it to some girls from LSU we thought were dogs and defending champs. I can't think about it for a second. Can you imagine? I thought stereotypes were gone. I guess not. Like, yes, Paul, black players can play quarterback. Black head coaches can win. White guys can play running back. Hi, Christian McCaffrey. White guys are more than possession receivers. And white girls can play basketball. I don't know if Paul Pierce knew this, but Caitlin Clark scored 44 against Virginia Tech, primarily black. Clark scored 80 points in 2 games against Ohio State, primarily black. Caitlin Clark scored 30 against those same black girls from LSU in the title game a year ago. She had 41 against South Carolina last year to get to the Final Four, and South Carolina, all black, all went to the WNBA. Maybe it's Pollyanna. Maybe what my dad taught me is wrong. My dad used to say, it doesn't matter the color of the person in the uniform color is what matters most. That's all that mattered. I didn't even notice if Chet Lemon was black. Who gives a crap? All I cared about was Chet Lemon and Larry Herndon. Right? Those guys mattered to me. When I was a kid, Gates Brown was really cool. I loved Willie Horton. I loved them because they were Tigers. What the hell is going on? The idiocy. The problem with women's basketball, and you and I are not aficionados.
No.
But the people, suddenly it gets popular. And then you've got everybody jumping on this bandwagon and they've got an opinion. Oh. So now you think it's about this and that. Where were you when she was popping for 45 against Wisconsin last year?
You got it.
You weren't talking about it, right? And the worst part of that whole diatribe by the idiot Paul Pierce was that Keyshawn Johnson and Skip Bayless, who's useless, are just sitting there going, Nobody had any pushback whatsoever. I mean, you push back on me sometimes and vice versa. That's what makes it good. That's what makes it healthy.
Absolutely.
What an idiotic thing to say.
Well, his brain hasn't been the same since, the jaws of life saved him, as you remember, in his career. And they had to extricate him from the court and the last rites. I mean, Shep, it does. I've never been there before. Okay. So I don't know what it's like to have a near death experience on the court. During his
boulder from the tomb. There's no question about that. So.
It's so funny you say that, because I think in today's day and age, it's people almost think that you're being PC when you say something like this. When I was a kid, I loved Chester Lemon. Like, he was my favorite player. Seriously. I have said 5,000 times in my career that I don't think Billy Sims gets the credit he deserves. That there's a generation of people that have no idea, because of Barry Sanders, Billy Sims was legitimately the only thing to root for the Detroit Lions when we were kids. Legitimately the only thing to root
No
for.
doubt.
I,
Right on.
Honest to goodness, well, my favorite black player is Billy Sims, while my favorite white player.
You're right.
Who
I mean,
thinks
David
that
Hill's
way,
dance.
man?
I would say this, Sean. Outside of Billy Sims, David Hill's dance was pretty fun to watch too.
It was. It was.
But no, you're 100% right. I've said as many times as you said that. I've said it about Lou Whitaker and how he should be in the Hall of Fame, and that it's reprehensible that he's not. It has nothing to do whether he's black or white. And yes, it a little bit has to do with the fact that he's a Tiger. But the point is that he was a great baseball player. He was a great second baseman. And when you look at the other numbers, he deserves to be there. I just can't figure it out. I don't know. Maybe you and I are maybe it's just different. I just hope more people are like that. The other thing that bothers me a little bit about the Caitlin Clark discussion is that Dawn Staley, the head coach at South Carolina, and look, she threw some roses at her yesterday for thanking her for helping carry the sport, which was really cool of her. And Dawn Staley, in case people wonder, was a phenomenal player at Virginia. And the only reason I know this is because I called the WNBA for over a decade. She was a really good professional player too. But she said in order for her to be the GOAT or in the GOAT discussion, and I believe Breanna Stewart said the same thing. And Breanna Stewart is arguably the best women's basketball player of all time, won 4 national championships at UConn, 2-time player of the year. But she said in order for her to be in that discussion, now, she had to win a championship. And I thought to myself, hold on a second. This is why I wanted to call you. I'd take Ken Griffey Jr., wouldn't you? Never won a title. I'd take Ted Williams. I'd take Ty Cobb. I'd take Barry Bonds. I'd take Tony Gwynn and Don Mattingly. Never won a championship. You mentioned Barry Sanders. I'd take Barry Sanders and Dan Marino and Bruce Smith and Randy Moss and J.J. Watt, LaDainian Tomlinson, Alan Page. I'd take those guys, wouldn't you? My guess is that there's a lot of teams that would have loved Mike Gardner and Adam Oates and Cam Neely and Marcel Dion and guys like that. Henrik Lundqvist. They never won a championship. I don't get that. It's a team sport, man. I mean, it's that we're not arguing Tiger Woods against Jack Nicklaus. Or Roger Federer against Novak Djokovic, or Steffi Graf against Serena Williams. We're talking about teams here. Think about that. Caitlin Clark had 30 against undefeated South Carolina, or 31, whatever. Her team lost, not just her.
No doubt. Dan Marino is always the first one that comes to my mind. I'll tell anybody who listens. The numbers that we're accustomed to seeing now, Shep, when we were kids, like what he did in 84, what was it? 5,084 yards, I think, and 48 touchdowns.
Like
we didn't, and there's a reason we didn't see it for another 20 years. Until let's face it, the league changed its rules. I mean, they flat out, made it more accessible, and we have to put pretty passing numbers in there, and we have to protect quarterbacks this way so we can get more. It's absolutely insane. Not enough is said about Dan Marino doing things in 1984 that people didn't do for the next 20 years.
And then when you have a guy who, like Joe Montana said, when somebody said, who do you think is the best? He said, the best quarterback I've ever seen was Dan Marino.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And that sounds good.
I'd take his opinion.
Yeah, me too. Hey, listen, before we get out of here, I want to tell you about our friend Lindsay Broadwell. When it's time to get yourself a new house, you're buying, you're selling, both, you need to contact the right agent. That agent, Lindsay Broadwell. Your house is probably the biggest investment you'll ever make, and that's why you need a pro. Lindsay grew up on the mean streets of Northville. Boy, are they mean. And she has expanded her team all over Southeast Michigan. She's an expert in all facets of the business. And when it's time to move, our friend Lindsay and her team will make sure you get the most out of your house and everything goes smoothly when you're finding your new home. You're buying, you're selling, first-time buyers, doesn't matter. Make sure you contact Lindsay at BroadwellHomes.com. She'll help you with everything from start to close. Licensed realtor at Real Broker LLC. Start your search today at BroadwellHomes.com. Shep, we have just a couple minutes. I want to ask you, as we sit here today, April 8th, what's your feeling on the Wings? In or out of the playoff?
Somebody asked me this last week, and I said my feeling is that they're out. I think Philly's a better team.
I have vacillated. I was in, now I'm out. And Philly has been, I know Tortorella screwing around and everything. They had their losing streak. If you believe in cycles, they're due to win a few hockey games now. It's been up and down with really this whole group. A couple of weeks ago, people were saying, oh, this Waugh experiment was a disaster. And then he won a few. And, Pittsburgh's obviously, I really think so. And part of the reason why I keep bringing up the regulation wins is I have a feeling they're going to end up tied and missing out on that. I really, truly.
So you're out now. Who do you think is going to get that second wild card then?
I think it's going to be Philly. I do. Okay. I think it's
so we're on the same page. Let me ask you one more quick thing, and then I know you got to go. Anwar wrote, we have to accept as well that Detroit is not a free agent destination as it once was. Why do we think that?
I think a lot of it comes back to, is the team in a position to win? I think a lot of guys would want to come to the Detroit Lions right now. I'm serious. I think
Agreed.
A lot of time teams would come.
I think for the Wings and Lions, it is a destination. I'm not saying it's a destination. I don't think it's a non-destination place.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's a fair point by Anwar, whether or not Tigers and Pistons are destinations. And I think that speaks strongly to what you just said. So I think that's a really good question. I just don't accept that blindly. I think it depends on the team and where the team is at.
I think if you can check both boxes, if you can be in the general vicinity with money and you are a better team than option B, if I'm a player, you're a moron if you don't go to Detroit. Yeah. I mean, what do the guys say all the time? I want a chance to win. Right. And there is validity in that, whether people want to admit it or not. Yeah, sure. There are guys that want to get their bag, but more often than not, if they can get their bag and be in a place where they have a chance to win, well, that's where they're going to go. And I
100%.
think that's where we're at right now with the Lions.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what it is, especially with guys at the end of their careers. If they don't have a ring, where can I go to get the ring? Lions is a pretty good destination right now. It's weird to say that, isn't it? But it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's true. Shep, always a pleasure, my friend. Brother. Let's do it again sometime this week. We'll talk up and we'll try to figure something out.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys for joining us. Thank you, Todd. Check us out. Make sure you follow on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff and subscribe on YouTube. I'm sure I've screwed it up, but this has been a flawless show so far, so we may as well end it up with a screw up. We'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Have a great week, everybody.